Call a meeting to order, and I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the territories of the Sinawas and Qualicum First Nations, and we thank them for allowing us to live, work, play, and learn on this beautiful part of the island. Adoption of the agenda. I have one item under trustee items. I will be speaking to the French Advisory Committee meeting that was held yesterday. But trustees, could I ask for a mover and a seconder, please, for the adoption of the agenda? Thank you, trustee Kurland. Thank you, trustee Kellogg. All those in favor? Trustee Austin? Thank you. Carried. Approval of the consent agenda. Mover and a seconder, please, for the consent agenda. Thank you, trustee Kellogg. Seconder, trustee Kurland. All those in favor? Kind of a short consent agenda. Thank you. Carried. We have no delegations this evening. Business arising, none. So, Mount Arrowsmith Teachers Association, Mr. Woods, please join us.
Okay, great. I, Wananat, bonsoir, and good evening, everyone. Just a couple of points I'd like to make tonight. First, I'd like to congratulate Ewan Rycroft on becoming the local CUPE president, and welcome to this leadership group. I look forward to collaborating and working with them to support and evaluate district initiatives, as well as to build union capacity and advocacy for workers. As it is budget season, I'd like to begin by addressing the provincial budget that was released last week. Although it is encouraging that with a large deficit projected, this government resisted calls for austerity and did not make cuts to important public services like our public education. I would like to point out some of the highlights and shortfalls of this most recent budget release. Although a specific teacher retention fund to enhance retention of the current workforce and improve working conditions and supports for students was not created, the government has committed $968 million to keep up with growing enrollment, which does include more teachers. The government has committed $4.2 billion to build, renovate, and seismically upgrade schools, and which I'm hoping that False Bay School is part of that money. Government is providing $255 million for the Classroom Enhancement Fund. That includes special education teachers and school counselors. There's also $30.3 million for learning supports to support students with dyslexia and related learning differences in the K-12 system. However, this $285 million funding for the Classroom Enhancement Fund and learning supports seems impressive at the provincial level. At the local level, it will be interesting to see if this funding will fully cover what our school district is actually spending on inclusive education. Overall, the $968 million in new spending on the K-12 system may sound like a lot, but it does simply cover growing enrollment caused by population growth and existing collective agreement requirements. We need bold action targeting teacher recruitment, retention, and training to make a dent in the shortage. Solving the teacher shortage is not just a labor issue, it's about protecting the integrity of public education for students and their families. Every child deserves the care and attention required to succeed. Teachers care, and when there aren't enough of them, our most vulnerable students are often the first to lose support. Second, in keeping with the budget theme, I would like to discuss employee sick leave days. We have heard from Superintendent Jory at previous board meetings the concern regarding costs associated with staff absenteeism, and that December replacement costs were the highest in history. We've also been told that our district reports a higher than average replacement costs as provincially examined. Currently, district administrators are engaged in conversations, formal meetings with teachers regarding the number of sick days that some teachers have taken over the course of a year. The district threshold for someone to be flagged for concern is 11 absentee days in one 12-month cycle. As we know that illnesses seem to be lasting longer, this threshold may need to be reviewed, as many single illnesses can last at least a week or longer. Although the intention of these conversations and formal meetings is to provide support, it is often interpreted by the teacher to be somewhat more challenging. As professionals, teachers put their students and their job first before themselves, at the detriment to their own personal health. Many teachers have shared with me how they usually do not take the time to be completely healthy and will return to work before they probably should. Other teachers have shared how they hold on until the weekend or a holiday weekend or a spring or winter break, only to be very ill during the whole time they're supposed to be on a break. I want to remind everyone that it is not very easy for a teacher to take a day to get healthy. Teachers don't want to break continuity within their class or readjust or rebook prior obligations or take the planning time necessary for someone else to come into your classroom for the day or the extra work that would be required when you return. Basically, it is not easy to be sick as a teacher because it often requires more work to take the time to be healthy than to simply make it through the day. Why am I raising this issue at the board meeting? Well, I want to assure the board of trustees that when teachers book a sick day, and I've been calling them health days, it is to improve their health so that they can be at their best for students in their care. I want to also assure the board that when a teacher decides to be absent for any length of time out of their classroom, that decision was not done in haste, but as a last resort. Unfortunately, the cost of sick time is an unfunded collective agreement liability that the Ministry of Education and Child Care does not provide targeted grant money for, which forces school boards to balance budgets by forcing them to make decisions between keeping a workforce healthy and supporting that or providing supportive educational programs. Is absolutely inexcusable in my view. Our negotiated collective agreement provides time to be taken off for our members to get and stay healthy. It is the time that school boards lobby. It is time that school boards begin to lobby the ministry to fund this part of the collective agreement appropriately, as the current situation, given society's health priorities, is incompatible with our current practice. As a union president, my support to members who are not feeling well will be to continue to suggest that they stay home and make sure they do what is necessary to get themselves healthy and well. We know that we all want healthy teachers who are at their best in front of students and ready to tackle the challenges and demands that a day of teaching can bring. Thank you. And as always, working conditions that are good for teachers are also great learning conditions for students. Heichka.
Thanks, Mr. Wood. Appreciate that insight. QB Local 3570 and our newly elected president, Ewan Rycroft, has joined us this evening. Welcome, Ewan. And off the top of Mr. Wood's report, he extended his congratulations to you as the new president, as do we as trustees. So over to you now for your standing report at our monthly board meetings. Welcome.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I do not have a report prepared. I just want to thank everybody for their hard work and everything they do at the school board and all the trustees. And I will hopefully have a report next meeting.
Sort of hot off an election, so we'll let you out at this time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Carrie and some Deepak sent a written message. Felicia, are you going to stand in and read it, or we do have Carol who agreed to read it on your behalf, but do you have it in hand and want to carry the Deepak report?
Sorry, were you asking me?
Yeah.
No, I don't have a copy of anything. Sorry, okay. I'm not even in the country, so I didn't even know if my service was going to work, and it is.
Aren't you lucky? We won't ask you where you are.
I'm in Mexico for a couple of weeks.
Okay, don't make us all sad, because It's been snowing here today. So
I may have, well, you know what? This is my first world problem because my 8-year-old is upset that he thought it was a snow day and he missed
Oh.
it.
no, he didn't
I
quite
said,
do
you
that.
were in the pool eating ice cream. You're fine.
Mr. Monroe holds the line on snow days. Anyway, we digress.
Perfect. Thank you.
Carol,
Go ahead and read it.
Trustee Kellogg has agreed to read the report that Carrie's prepared. Over to you, Trustee Kellogg.
Okay, so this report is from SD 69 DPAC, Qualicum School District, February 27th, 2024, DPAC update for the Qualicum School District Board meeting. It was written by Carrie and is going to be presented by Carol Kellogg, trustee. DPAC has been focusing on back to basics with our PACs. Sometimes all fundraisers and pressures to raise money become a bit overwhelming, and DPAC wants to empower and support PACs and PAC executives to remind them that fundraising is outlined by the British Columbia Confederation of Parent Advisory Councils is not a key role of PACs. As per BC CPAC,
DPAC. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
the main role of PACs. Advises school principals and staff on parents, caregivers' views and feedback about school programs, policies, plans, and activities, encourages parents, caregivers' involvement in school and support programs that promote parent caregiver involvement, communicate with parent caregivers to promote cooperation between the home and school in providing support for the education of children. Organize PAC activities and events and endeavor to provide parent caregiver education. DPAC is passionate about helping volunteers create community and model that being part of PAC and DPAC is truly a celebration of your child's education marathon. One of the neat things they do at PAC meetings is a roundtable when each PAC can highlight 2 stars and 1 wish for their PAC. We've heard about PAC's crafts being made, readathons, dances, family games, and movies. Great job, PACs. In modeling community connections, this past month, DPAC executive representatives toured the Winchelsea Learning Center, met with the Qualicum School District Principal of Indigenous Education, and invited her to the DPAC meeting to outline some of the Qualicum School District activities. DPAC also believes that coffee and chat in real life, it's got IRL, but I've learned what that is today, is the best way to connect communities. And we've had a great few weeks where we met up with the Winchelsea Pass and Seep PAC reps and Nanoose Bay PAC reps to discuss all things Qualicum School District and drink coffee. Congratulations to the new CUPE president, Ewan Rycroft. Not only do you get to be a great leader for CUPE, you now get to come to DPAC meetings, which is truly a winning and meeting the lotto. DPAC is still looking for the best way for us to spend our gaming grant money for this year. DPAC gaming grants are allocated to speakers or events that directly support parent caregivers, so stay tuned for more. Our March PAC meeting is canceled, and we'll see everyone at the April 17th DPAC meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. And as you know, DPAC is busy, and trying to connect and make sure community, parents, caregivers, and the districts and all of our workings are in sync and working together. Next on our agenda this evening is I do not see any public questions or comments. So we'll move to the superintendent's report, and I'll call upon our superintendent, Dr. Peter Jory. Dr. Jory.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings, everyone. Hello, bonjour, squale. Overall, things are moving along in the Qualicum School District. There are so many positives to report on. which you'll hear more about from my colleagues and through the committee reports. I will start, however, with a concern about attendance. I have mentioned staff absenteeism a number of times in board meetings, often to comment on how we are doing in regard to service delivery, which is generally very well, but also in regard to budget pressures, which are generally somewhat worrisome. Student absenteeism is still an issue throughout the system. Our typical attendance rate has dropped from around 90% per day on average, down to prior to COVID, down to the mid 80s in present times. It's noticeable from a statistical perspective, but also from a practical one on the ground in our classrooms. Again, this change in behavior is by no means a local issue, as jurisdictions all around the world are reporting similar challenges in the post-COVID era. International media has picked up on the story and is asking, where are all the kids? Essentially, families learn that when their kids stay home, the sky didn't fall in, at least not right away. Certainly, the effects on low or no attendance will show themselves eventually, but probably in ways that are primarily subtle and hard to identify. The responses will need to be more elegant too. They will need to be localized with a focus on regaining connections, the development of community, improving mental health, and the support of the whole student with improved outcomes at the center. These all remind me of our strategic plan, which is the right way to get at this issue as a district, in my opinion. We also need to be more consistent with our communication from our schools. We've started conversations about what informing parents and caregivers should look like across the school district, starting with the classroom teacher and continuing on with the school admin at each site. We do have a new data tool at our disposal through EdPlan Insight that really gives us a better look at absenteeism and will help us to share that information more fulsomely. Sometimes better information changes behavior. Even so, it is our responsibility to share what we know. This also solidifies my interest in the Later Start conversation we are having. I've already described the Later Start survey feedback in a previous meeting. Ballina Secondary Student Voice recently had a session discussing start times, and the summary from that discussion has been shared with the board. I do believe we have a chance to support better sleep patterns, positively impact mental health, and actually give at least a small boost to attendance through later start times. Of course, all these decisions depend on our busing system, which presents a number of complexities that make specific changes very difficult, if not impossible right now. In regard to the transportation department, if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that we've digitized the application system. We've moved registration up into the springtime so rosters can be settled much more quickly in the fall. And we have added a texting system so parents can get real-time updates when changes occur due to inclement weather or other issues. Kudos to the team for those changes. There are 3 schools that we would like to make bell time adjustments this April, yes, coming up, just 5 minutes each so that the bus routes connect better, and that's Bolinas, Arrowview, and Oceanside. Then, in the fall, we are planning to roll out a swipe card system, which will give parents and caregivers real-time updates on their students, whether they get on or off, as well as provide the operations department with much better data on ridership to help with the future routing. With all that in mind, I'm proposing that we undergo a full-scale review of the transportation system in the fall of 2024, which will gather all the information necessary to develop the next set of routes using the new software system, along with the creation of procedures to support the most effective and most efficient service model we can have as a school district. It's time to do this, and it's exciting. Back to the later start conversation. I do believe that an incremental approach may be best for us. If we are able to move those 3 schools that I mentioned forward 5 minutes starting at spring break, I may then ask the board in the March meeting to support a wholesale adjustment of start times of just 10 minutes later across the district for the September of 2024 startup. A compromise for sure, but one that should not incur many of the challenges or concerns that were raised through the survey and focus groups. Further, or following that, we would give the transportation software a chance to do its job and see if we can make more specific changes to the earlier starting schools in the district and bring those families a bit more relief for September of 2025. More to follow for sure on this interesting and very complex topic. I will also mention cell phones and other devices. Premier Eby made an announcement some months ago about placing restrictions on cell phones, and the system has responded in accordance with that. Locally, we have augmented the draft language in a policy in AP, which will come to the board tonight, that provides more specific direction to schools regarding their codes of conduct. As well, I've added a new space on our district code of conduct template designed through our review process last year and alerted our principals of the need to add some language in their next version and make sure to include it in their annual consultation processes, which they will summarize and share with the board very soon. To be honest, cell phones do not really have much presence in most of our schools. However, these changes will give some license to look more carefully at practice around the district, empowers staff to make changes where necessary, and encourage more learning opportunities for our staff and our students. I'm interested, particularly, in the legislation the government is considering that could potentially hold companies more accountable for the negative outcomes of technology, of which there are many. But for now, we will all do our part to look at this issue locally and support our own students towards better outcomes. As always, I will leave the rest of the education updates to my colleagues. Again, thank you to all of you for doing what you do, whether you paint the walls, drive or maintain the buses, tune the HVACs, trim the hedges, answer the phones, or teach, coach, and support students in any manner. Your efforts are noticed and appreciated. Thank you. Bonjour, or sorry, yeah, Matt threw me there with his extra language. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you, bonjour. Hi, Sepke, everyone. Got a little rattle there with the bonus language, Matt. You threw me.
Trustee Young.
Yeah, just
au revoir. Au revoir. What am I doing?
Yeah, or arrivederci.
Yeah, let's cut that part.
Yeah. Yeah, so you said something about a full transportation review. And so 2 questions. Could you repeat when you're thinking of that, and would it go to then Finance and Operations Committee of the whole? Is that your plan?
Say, what was the first part of the question?
When again were you going to do it?
I think a good place to start this would be the fall of 2024.
Okay, so that's next fall. So we
No,
changed
this fall. This fall.
coming fall. So
this is coming fall.
We change the bus, the start times in the fall by 10 minutes. At the same time, start a transportation review, which would then come to Finance and Operations.
That would be a reasonable process. Yeah. So
Okay.
5-minute tweak to 3 schools that are a little bit out of kilter right now with the bus schedule we've discovered. And then I would next month bring a recommendation for the board to consider about a 10-minute later start in the fall, followed by a transportation review, which would look at all of our routing and all of our practice and hopefully inform a much more efficient routing process and list of procedures for us to make sure that all was going well.
Thank you, Dr. Jory.
Seeing no further hands, I'll call upon our education program update team, Associate Superintendent Ms. Wilson and Director of Instruction Mr. Terpstra, who gets to go first this month.
In French, please.
In French, yes.
En français, it will be me. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to report a couple of exciting events that took place last week and this week. The Qualicum School District was able to host the Island Leadership Coalition, which is sponsored by the BC Superintendent's Island chapter. It's a place where 85 teachers from all over the island who are interested in learning about formal leadership. Also, 5 of our own teachers are involved in that. Chief Rakalma joined us to welcome participants from across the island, and really touching was our K-3 learning community who did the territorial acknowledgement, and something they've been practicing on all year. Yesterday at Bolinas, we also hosted 50 teachers from Qualicum, Cowichan, Comox, and Nanaimo for learning rounds. Sessions were led by Leighton Schneller and our own teachers, Chris Eisner and Ashley Lamoureux, got to co-teach lessons with all the adults standing around and seeing some of the new strategies that they were using. And we thank them for, putting themselves out there in front of a larger audience. We also totally appreciate our students who were able to participate in their lesson with teachers in the room observing. Interestingly, Jesse Racamo was also part of it, and Ministry of Education Superintendent of Indigenous Learning also shared their own stories on language as part of the lesson. So it was really a great day of learning, and the whole group was able to meet for 80 minutes after, debrief the lessons, look at what they really enjoyed, and take back what they observed and practice in, and report back to us in our third of a three-part series. A couple other things, spring break, I'm just reporting out that we have 3 trips going out this year from the district. KSS is going to Portugal, Gibraltar, and Spain. Bolinas has 2 trips. One is France with mostly French immersion students, and I think if trustees remember, this is actually a capstone project of one of the French immersion graduates, so it's co-organized by her with her sponsor teachers. And then the third trip is Bolinas has another group going to London, Paris, Barcelona, and Rome. So exciting trips for a lot of our students who will be around the world this spring break. And last from me is just a reminder to everyone that learning updates for K-7 will be going home no later than spring break, and parents can look forward to seeing where their students are before we go into the spring.
Thanks, Mr. Terpstra. Is there any questions from trustees? Seeing none, I'll move to Associate Superintendent Ms. Wilson.
One of the things about going last is I'm never sure what's been said. Am I getting feedback?
You just maybe a bit muffled, that's all.
Oh.
Nope, you're okay.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do a plug again for kindergarten registration. It's important that we register our kindergartens so we can start our planning for next year. Some people are asking, what about cross-boundary and when do we look at our cross-boundary applications? They are closed just before spring break, and we do one meeting before spring break and let as many people know that we can. If there's any way we can do any approvals, then we do that. I'm surprised Matt didn't mention it, that we've got our professional development day on Friday and got to see some of the courses that are being offered and workshops that are being offered this Friday for our teachers in the district. The Pro-D committee has done a phenomenal job of offering some really strong, very eclectic presenters coming in. It's going to take place at Bolinas Secondary School, and so all teachers are part of that. So credit to the Pro-D committee there, Matt. It looks great. Want to share that one of the things that also Matt, as president, and I do have on my list here, is that we are one of the unique districts that don't have recruitment concerns at the moment. We hired 5 new teachers teaching on call last week. We looked to see where we need to add to our list and add to the specialties, and so we've got we constantly have people applying to our district, and we were able to secure 5 new teachers last week, and they've been added, and I think they've already been in schools. I know that the SEAC report is in there, and one of the work we're trying to work on with our SEAC, which is a committee that meets, we want to try and make it 3 or 4 times a year. We had a meeting this past month, and we're working on our norms and working on how we do our work together. Not because we need to know how to work together, but we need to be thinking about what needs to come to that particular committee. And in speaking of norms, one of the things that we had that beginning of February is Kyle Burke came back into our district and worked with our principals and vice principals around their school plans. Also supported, you've heard Superintendent Jory talk about the NERTs, that's NRTs, and that's the support that we're providing through TOC release days to teachers so they can do some collaboration. Teachers are really good at communicating and talking together. And sometimes you can spend an hour or so talking with a colleague and you finish at the end of it going, what did we decide? What did we talk about? What are we doing? So Kale walked through an afternoon, the Wednesday afternoon. He walked us through how to set norms and how to look at having productive conversations so you know what you're doing at the end of that conversation and what you're coming back to, and so what the observable impacts are going to be in terms of the work teachers are doing together, as well as the impact it's going to have on student learning. So I really wanted to acknowledge the work we continue to do with Kale in our district. It's got great momentum and we're seeing an impact from the work he's doing. Also, learning surveys have started. Schools are starting to work on their learning surveys. Some may have finished more than others, but that is something. And again, it was interesting at the ILC on Friday. That was one of the pieces of data that they asked school district teams to take a look at, and what were some of the changes that we wanted to do with the learning surveys data. What were some of the things that you would do with that? So yeah, it's only 2.5 weeks to spring break, I was told the other day. So coming up really quickly. Thank you.
Any questions of our Associate Superintendent? Trustees? Seeing none, we'll move now to the Finance and Operations Committee of the whole report. And Trustee Young, as we know, is a facilitator, and that's pages 17 to 20 in your package this evening. Over to you, Trustee Young.
Yeah, this evening we have a fairly large package, and we got to a lot of stuff in the meeting itself. So it's worth reading the package this time. I know sometimes people just kind of scan it and go over it. And further to that, there's a briefing note here from Secretary Treasurer Amos that really lays out the rationale for the motion that I'm going to move in a moment around the $25 registration fee. I think if you read the rationale, it will make more sense than me trying to speak to it. So with that, I will move that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum support the staff recommendation to implement a transportation registration fee of $25 for eligible and courtesy riders to coincide with the bus pass application process.
Could I have a seconder, please, to Trustee Young's motion? Thank you. Trustee Kellogg. Mr. Amos, would you like to add further commentary to draw folks' attention if they haven't read the actual backgrounder to your report? Would you like to touch on some highlights?
I would be happy to, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, so this was something that was as part of our process. And again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will highlight some of the aspects that are in the briefing note. We're coming back to it again after last year. We introduced the concept last year as we were reviewing some other fees, some administrative fees that we charge around the district. We talked about field trip fees, internal field trip fees. We talked about the tenant rental rates that we pay, that we charge our long-term tenants. We talked about our facility rental rates and the impact that we dealt with all of those over the course of last year. This was one of the ones that was approached by administration, and at the end of the day, the board passed on the decision, effectively saying, we'd like to know more, but in the meantime, we're not willing to go forward. So it was from the lens of bringing it forward for a second review or a second discussion, recognizing that, as Superintendent Jory spoke to, the routing software is in place, and it's now that the Transportation Department purchased last year. It's being developed and introduced into the department. And so things are obviously being set up for it, with the hope that obviously it would be mostly live come September. Certainly there's quite a bit of work still yet to do in terms of identifying the routes and putting them on a map or a graphic to indicate where the current stops are, that kind of thing. The background that basically feeds into setting the route software up. And so as indicated in the briefing note, there's been up to 3 things, or certainly with the last couple of years with new operations team review or taking on the transportation department, and we've lost a lot of the historical, we've lost the institutional knowledge with retirements and for the most part the last couple of years. So on the plus side, it on the downside is obviously people are walking at the door with historical information. On the plus side, it's forcing operations to ask those questions on why do we do things the way we do. And so one of the things that's been brought forward from transportation department was the lack of mirrored routes. And this is a time when the AM route would normally mirror the afternoon route so that you knew which kids got on the bus in the morning were the ones that were being delivered home at the end of the day kind of thing. And so because some of our routes don't have that mirrored effect, it means it's not easy to cancel routes in the event of inclement weather or in the event of something occurring over the course of the day where the afternoon route needed a spare driver that we couldn't find. It means you can't extricate one route from the other without impacting other buses, etc. The other item, obviously, that's coming forward from the superintendent is the bell time review. Not to say that anything has been determined at this point, short of the 3 schools that he indicated, but because you've got secondary schools that feed into the same bus that an elementary school is already on the bus and that kind of thing, because they have, if you want, competing schedules, it means managing how those bell times affect maybe the secondary placement of the kids on the same route. So part and parcel with us having to develop or look at some of these some of the work that transportation is obviously pursuing with this new software. The other thing that's kind of been raised by transportation is even though we have a complete list of the number of bus passes that have been issued, we don't know how many of those are actually being utilized in any given day. And so in some cases, you may see a bus going down the street and it may have 50% or 50% occupancy on it, even though there's assigned seats for 100% of the seats. So in any given day, they don't know exactly how many kids are utilizing those passes that are out there. They're basically holding seats that could be used for another rider or could be used for another rider on another bus to get them closer to home at a given stop. So in some cases, they do their route development much like an airline, where they put more kids on the bus than would normally fit on the bus. And so because in some cases they might actually build in a 30% overcapacity, and then on the one day of the year that everybody rides the bus, they have to send out a new bus to pick up the stranded riders, as it were. So all of this kind of this thinking is going into how best can we understand the riders, understand those that are using the routes and are using the transportation, and how can we get that buy-in from families? Not to say they don't deserve a bus pass by any means, because at the end of the day, if we find that all riders who pay this fee potentially will be using it, then we'll still build the capacity and build the routes accordingly. But we at this juncture don't know how many seats we actually need on any given route to move the kids that we've got on in any consistent manner. So it's hoped that with this registration fee, it'll, and I won't say buy-in, but it'll create that support from the families to recognize that no, I really do need this pass. Here's my registration fee. We will use it, and it'll be enough and then we will build our routes accordingly. But the wonder would be that if there's some individuals who say, well, actually, we didn't use it all of last year. There's no point in me registering this year because of the money value. So we're not going to even register. So hopefully, and again, I don't know if $25 is enough. I'm not going to go down that road of how much is enough for a parent to either commit or uncommit from something. But point being, it's hopefully recognizing that maybe with a registration fee, we can get confirmation that the family really does need the seat, and really does need the bus pass, and then we'll build accordingly. That's not to say that if parents, and you'll see that at the end of the briefing note, that's not to say that if parents say, I really need the seat, but I can't afford the registration, if they will do their normal process of declaring it to the school administrators as they do now. It's all in confidence. And if there is a need to waive the fee, it would absolutely, we would waive the fee as we have always done. But it really is about getting that commitment from families to say, yes, I really do need that seat. And yes, I commit to using it. Or B, I'm willing to give it up for this year, because we didn't use it most days or all days at all. And so I would rather give that seat to somebody else, either on a different route or a courtesy rider scenario where they're trying to get to daycare or they're trying to get to their second parent, and that kind of arrangement that sometimes adds to the complexity of the transportation department as they're trying to move. I think we said the 2,500 kids with passes. 2,500 passes that are out there. We recognize lots of kids are using our bus transportation. We're not about to take that away. We just want a better understanding of making these routes as efficient as possible. If we can modify bell times, we might be able to modify the pickup times. We might be able to modify the time on a bus from delivery and pickup. Again, we recognize that in some of our routes, we have kids, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, on the bus for maybe 40 minutes. And we don't want to do that unless we really have to. And so hopefully this will get to us understanding the needs of the families better, as well as obviously within the constraints of the bell times and the mirroring of routes, that we can build a more efficient system that serves the greater community better.
Thanks, Mr. Amos. A more pragmatic approach, I think, to trying our efficiencies and having our seamless ridership. I have first Trustee Kurland.
So just to clarify, this is per that surcharges for per student, not family, right?
Correct.
I mean, so like if somebody has 3 kids, it'll be $75 for that, right? I mean,
correct.
Just for example.
Yeah, so as I've indicated, it's basically up to 50 per family, with the assumption that the first 2 kids are 25 each, and any additional child after that is free.
Okay.
So
because at 2.54 children, isn't that 62.50? Okay, so the third child is
waived.
free. Okay, I get it. All right, thank you.
Trustee Austin.
Hi, just to basically reiterate what I said at the Finance and Ops Committee meeting, I won't be supporting this motion. And it's not because I don't understand the challenges that the Transportation Department is facing. I understand those challenges. I think the software will be a very interesting introduction to our system. I would like to see how it works for a year. And when parents are given that data to say, well, you had a bus pass, but you only used it like two times. I don't think the money is I think that data will be more telling to parents than the money. And it's just another case of downloading costs onto our parents, and the parents that can afford it, maybe they think their kid may only ride the bus twice, but they can afford it because 25 or 50 bucks is nothing to them, but it's a whole hell of a lot to some other families. And so of course, it's just one of those things that people that can afford it will do it, even if their kid doesn't end up riding the bus anyway. So I would rather see see how the software works for the next year, and provide the data to the parents of how much their child actually used it, and let them try and make the decision, rather than downloading yet another cost to our families. So no, I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Trustee Kellogg.
Yeah, I was on in the same thought pattern as trustee Austin, but the fact that if a family cannot afford it, the fees will be waived. To me, that speaks volumes, so I will be supporting the $25 fee.
Trustee Kellogg, any further comments, trustees? Seeing none, I think everybody has the motion, staff recommendation to implement transportation registration fee of $25 for eligible and courtesy riders to coincide with bus pass application processes. Moved by trustee Young, seconded by trustee Kellogg. All those in favor? And contrary-minded or abstaining, Ms. Austin? Contrary-minded, trustee Austin. Carried. Now on to our policy committee of the whole, and trustee Kellogg provides the facilitation of that process, and I would call on trustee Kellogg to start us off.
Do Elaine
Okay,
have something to say there? I see her hand is up.
But we haven't
don't
had a motion. We haven't had a motion on the table yet for anything, so I'll defer to that. But trustee Young, you have a comment?
Yeah, it's actually on the report itself. And I actually emailed trustee Kellogg to advise her a little bit, but probably, I don't know whether you got your email up there, Carol. There's just a couple of errors, and I think they're inconsequential errors, and I wouldn't raise them, except that I know that some people, some parents, question when we make little errors. So I just wanted to point them out. Can I do that now?
Does it affect the motions?
Not really. It's in the reports. It's in the report itself. Let me just do it. Okay.
We've approved the agenda and everything and contained in it, so I don't know if Superintendent Jory, some of this is technical, you know.
Yeah, I'd love to see a synopsis of that, and then we could do a further edit before they go live on the site. I think that would be a better way to go. Some of these there may be disagreement on the matter, so and it's not a place for us to discuss. Do appreciate any of that work. If it's something that changes the meaning as compared to what was discussed or agreed upon in the meeting, that might be a place to point out. But I prefer not to do edits in a public session. That's tedious for people.
And we have another policy committee meeting. Yeah, another policy committee meeting coming up as well in April that can look at the finer points of that. So I'll ask trustee Kellogg to start off with board policy 103, school and district branding, which is a very passionate policy for some.
okay, here we go. Recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum approve first reading to adopt the revisions to board policy 103, school district branding, at its regular meeting of February 27th, 2024.
So moved by trustee Kellogg. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, trustee Young. Any comments, trustees? This is first reading. Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And the second half of it'd be 103, second half, with new and repurposed buildings have to be removed. Rescinded, sorry. It's a rescinding of a motion.
That the Board of Education, School District 69 Qualicum rescind the administrative procedure to board policy 103, new and repurposed facilities, at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
Thank you, trustee Kellogg. And the seconder, please. Thank you, trustee Austin. And questions, trustee Young?
Yeah, just rationale for rescinding something before we've actually passed the 3 readings of the policy. It leaves us without any administrative procedures. Procedurally.
I can speak to
So-
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
Dr. Jory?
Because the previous policy, in my opinion, and as discussed at that meeting, it wasn't serving a purpose, especially since other related policy language was bolstered. And therefore, the policy was redundant, and then therefore this AP is redundant. So my point is that it can be rescinded right away because it's not actually serving a purpose. And maybe confusing, in fact.
Okay,
Okay, seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Thank you, Carrie. Board Policy 510, Learning Resources.
recommendation that the Board of Education, School District 69 Qualicum approve first reading to adopt Board Policy 510, Learning Resources at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
And could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Are there any questions, trustees? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, carried. Board Policy 700, Safe, Caring, and Inclusive School Communities.
That the Board of Education of School District 69 approve first reading to adopt the revisions to Board Policy 700, Safe, Caring, and Inclusive School Communities at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
Could I have a seconder, please, trustees? Seconder, thank you, Trustee Austin. All those in favor? This is only the first go round of it, so we will hear it again. Thank you. And Board Policy 705, Corporate Community Sponsorship Partnership and Advertising in Schools.
That the Board of Education of School 69 approve reading to adopt revisions to Board Policy 705, Corporate Community Sponsorship, Partnership, and Advertising in School at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
And a seconder, please, trustees. Thank you, Trustee Austin. Sorry, the branding one wasn't as interesting to some as the corporate sponsorship, so I believe we'll be hearing something from our community on this one. Seeing no hands of questions, trustees, all those in favor?
Wait.
Oh, sorry, you didn't give your raise hand. I thought you were voting fast. Trustee
No,
Kurland.
Trying to get my hand up there. So I just want to point out that this is just the first reading. And
Yes.
I think that, this is gonna be fairly contentious, and we're gonna be, as the responsible board that we are, we're gonna be having a good look at this with other factors. So it is just the first reading.
Thank you, Trustee Kurland. That is correct. No further comments, trustees. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now, Board Policy 100, Sustainable Practices.
That the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum approve third and final reading to adopt the revisions to Board Policy 100, Sustainable Practices at its attendant administrative procedure at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
Trustee Kellogg, and a seconder, please. Trustee Austin? Seeing no hands, all those in favor? Carried. Board Policy 105, Use of School Facilities. Trustee Kellogg.
Recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum approve third and final reading to adopt the revisions of Board Policy 105, Use of School Facilities and its attendant administrative procedure at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
Trustee Kellogg, and a seconder, please. Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Seeing no hands. All those in favor? Carried. And last but not least, board bylaw meetings of the Board of Education. Trustee Kellogg.
Recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 approve third and final reading to adopt the revisions of board policy, board bylaw 3, meetings of the Board of Education at its regular board meeting of February 27th, 2024.
And a seconder, please. Okay, guys, seconder. Thank you, Trustee Young. This is really about video conferencing and things like that. And so this is basically bringing us into this new world. Call a question. Oh, Trustee Austin, sorry, question? You're on mute.
Thank you. It's very unusual, I find, that with policy, we tend to have really good discussions at committee meeting and work through things. And so I find myself in a very unusual spot right now, but I will be abstaining on this vote simply because I am uncomfortable with the introduction of a couple of the sections in there under special meetings and committee meetings, particularly around the recordings. I understand some of the discussion that happened at the policy, and that is in the report. So thank you for that, Carol. But I'm uncomfortable with that. I have looked at other districts and their bylaws, and though, you know, they talk about their meetings, they talk about the need to have minutes, but people are avoiding the recording or not recording, putting it actually in their bylaws, because that makes it pretty, pretty serious. And I think it's still fluid. I think people and districts and schools and school districts are still working through some of the technology and some of the challenges or not challenges. And I just think it's still really fluid. And I think it's far too, I think it's premature to be having it in our bylaws like this. So I will be abstaining because I'm not comfortable with it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. I think to have us at least acknowledge what we are doing at present is worth our amending. Bylaw can come back at any time if we wish it to, but I think we need to acknowledge what we have been doing now in practice for, almost 3 years, except possibly for a committee of the whole and special meetings, and that then is a decision at the time we make. Trustee Kurland, further comments?
So I was going to suggest that we table this until we can discuss it again, but if that's not, taking your comments into consideration, that we can always go back and change it. I'm just suggesting that maybe if there's contention to this, we could just table it or do whatever you do to put off the decision, third reading, and then go back and do it again.
Well, tabling we usually do until the next meeting, and that's only 2 weeks away. So, and there isn't a policy committee. So I would suggest that it proceed. And if we have some real difficulty, we can revisit the whole board bylaw 3 at the time that we feel we need to make some changes or whatever. But I think it behooves us to acknowledge what we are trying to do at best of times in the name of transparency, is to acknowledge that we do video recordings. So that's just some guidance. Yeah.
All right. If people are comfortable with that.
Good. Call a question then. All those in favor? Abstaining will be Trustee Austin. Thank you very much. Thanks, Trustee Kellogg, for lots of hard work, as it's ongoing work, and it's our commitment to getting through the whole book in 4 years. It's usually is a challenge. Education Committee of the Whole. Trustee Austin, your report is pages 72 to 76, but further comments that you'd like to address?
No, it was a great meeting, as often our education committee meetings are. I just want to draw people's attention that the KSS Student Council will be holding their second Climate Action Symposium in April, and that is great to see. And they already have a couple of great guests lined up, so that's that's wonderful. So yeah, just keep have a look at the report, because there's always some great information. And I try and in each of the reports, I have a line at the bottom of each one around resources, which hopefully links to websites that people may want to dive a little further into some of the information in the report. So I just encourage people to have a look and go to follow up on some of those links and information.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. No reports from representatives or outside organizations. We'll move to trustee items and ministry partner liaison meetings. This is a meeting that's held by the Ministry of Education and Childcare for 2 days for the superintendent and the secretary treasurer, just 1 day for board chairs to attend, to hear lots of stuff about what's coming down from the ministry. I think we had interesting information presented to us about PISA results, which people can look at the PISA. Numeracy is the declining factor in PISA reports, which I'm not sure that it's a surprise to many. The framework for enhancing student learning continues to evolve. This is an ongoing initiative by the ministry to have us understand how our kids are doing and how we were reporting that to parents and our communities. Supporting student success was more of a introspective look after COVID and how things are doing with the landscape of learning and kids in general. So that was interesting. But I think the most interesting presentation that we had that sort of generated my thinking, and I did take it then to the SEAC committee, was artificial intelligence. I know we all know about it. We're hearing lots about it, different things about it, but the ministry seems to be embarking on preparing documentation. I don't know how to really frame it as to what it's going to look like, but they're going to have information pieces or profiles or backgrounders in 4 sections on AI developed. They called them modules. And one would be directed to boards and educational leaders. Another will be directed to teachers, the other parents and caregivers, and a 4th to students. So it's probably the what, where, when, why of AI. And it will be interesting to see how it comes out, falls out. I didn't get it. I don't know if Superintendent Jory or Secretary Amos remember if there was a timeline on this, but I think they hoped it to be very quickly, because of course it is top of mind for folks. And so that was the big takeaway for me, was for the meetings, to have AI on the table on the landscape of the ministry, and they're preparing documentation for us all to mull over and consider as we take this on in our communities, in our classrooms, and part of our teaching strategies, possibly for the high schools and beyond. So I think it was good information, at least to be aware that they are aware that it might be nice to have a provincial landscape presented as to all of those groups on AI. So that would be my
I wrote down they might get documentation to us in March, question mark. So it might be as soon as that. They were working on it at that time. I think my take is, if I can just interject a bit.
Yes,
my
please.
biggest takeaway is, because we had a session on the day before, and I spoke to our board about it, and I shared some of my learning, if you want, with our budget, with the budget work and sussing out the survey information, the survey data kind of thing. So it really is, my takeaway was, it's not something to be afraid of, but you have to understand it, and you have to understand its uses. And again, it's not going to answer all your questions. This case that I was cited in front, a court case that was cited to us as an example, it hit the press the other day in terms of a legal team citing a case law as a defense to why they were actioning something. It sounded impressive, except it wasn't actually a legitimate case. And obviously one of the legal folks, one of their legal clerks, as it were, did some research, write me a chat GPT on a case that would recognize these sets of precedents. It came back with some information. They used it in court documents, and it was found that it actually had no legal standing. It didn't exist. Long story short, I learned again quite a bit of the positives of it and how you can use it in the case of the surveys. So it was quite interesting to keep an open mind about it.
Thanks, Mr. Amos. Yeah, it will present its challenges to us and have to keep us on our toes as it goes, as it evolves. So the second piece to trustee items, I'll prepare, or I didn't, the meeting was yesterday, the French Advisory Council was held yesterday. It's usually held 3 times a year. It looks like French immersion enrollment is going to be good and solid for 2 classrooms. And hopefully we will, barring any difficulties, not have a waiting list. The Oceanside Carnival was a big hit. They spent a week of immersing the English and the immersion kids into games and books and poutine and bonhomme and music, and it was very uplifting to listen to the parents that were present who had, volunteered, as well as the teachers from École Oceanside that were part of the leadership team. But they had also, which was a great sort of part of the path going forward for the French Advisory Committee, grade 10 students from BSS came to help, and they helped for a couple of days. They worked with some of the stations and the program that the whole school participated in. And I think the parent comment back was very uplifting to say it was nice to see the English kids included with the French immersion kids, which is reverse to what then the parents of Canadian Parents for French reported in the high school at BSS, to say, really, we need to try and include the French immersion kids in with the English program and have them not feel that they're isolated. But that's just a transition thing, I think, because over the years 10, 11, and 12, they do integrate into very much an English program as well as their French. But I think one of the highlights I took away from the Bolinas side of things, and it was actually Mr. Terpstra reported that we this year were able to offer science in French to our French immersion kids, and that's always nice when we can add a program in French for kids to the French immersion kids to pursue. Still continue to quite successfully, I'm sure, under Mr. Terpstra's leadership, get federal funding grants for teacher support. And Lynn Bouchel has been now 2 years, I think, Mr. Terpstra, providing a lot of support to the elementary and secondary school students on teachers on a one-to-one or classroom basis. The overall work in numeracy is excelling, I think, is now excelling or gaining some strength in French and in French assessments. And the whole transition, again, it will still be a focus for another year of the transition between the elementary and the high school to make sure the kids are feeling that they can move from one step to the other without too much of a hiccup. So the French immersion or the French Advisory Committee is strong and certainly excited about a lot of their things. And then they have a couple of workshops or Pro-D they can take a part of, but that's not until spring break, and then in April that French teachers can pursue. So it's nice that we're able to offer those Pro-D opportunities to our French teachers as well. This is under the stewardship of Mr. Terpstra. I'm an observer, but it's always wonderful to hear the stories that are happening on our French immersion side of our program offerings. So if there are no questions, I'll move to public question period. Are there any questions from the public? Alicia, how are you in Mexico?
Good. I'm actually really cold by this fan, but I'm not going to complain.
Okay, hang in there.
Sorry if this is a repeat topic. Is there a quick answer on why we're needing to be doing the proof of residency thing again right now with all this? Is it all the schools or just some of them?
Sorry, I'm bereft of that knowledge. Proof of residency. Superintendent Jory, can you help us?
I see Associate Superintendent Wilson muting
Okay,
and signaling that she'd like to step in here.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Go for it.
We've just gone through an audit, and one of the things that we're learning through our audit is that some audit teams don't accept just a little checky box to say that I showed my proof of residency to the person that took my registration form. And so when we had a quick look at our files, most of our files don't have proof of residency, and it's something that audit teams in the ministry are asking for us to make sure we have in files. So rather than doing the work all at once, if we are to be audited for ordinary students that are registered and enrolled in our system, we thought we'd do some work up front and ask politely if our families could take a screenshot, a Photoshop, or drop one in, and we'll photocopy it. Just something that is a proof of residency that you are allowed to be living and live in BC. It can be anything that a care card number or a tenancy agreement, it can be anything. We want to make it as simple as possible. So we have asked all of our elementary schools to check their files and to do that. We're asking all of our grade 7s transitioning into grade 8 to do that. And then our second set will be going through our current grade 8s through grade 11s to make sure we've got that in their files. So thank you, parents, for helping us do that, making sure we're in compliance.
Oh, and thank you, Felicia, for the question, actually, because I wasn't aware of that. That's fine. That's not something that we need to be day-to-day have our hands on, but I would suggest, and Ms. Wilson, Dr. Jory could correct me, that this has something to do more with cities or in Vancouver that have decided to be called sanctuary cities. We don't hear a lot about that as to how it's going there or what it means for them, but it is a challenge to them for immigrant families coming in and then the high numbers. I don't want to nail Surrey or Burnaby or any particular districts, but that's what twigs in my mind is what this is maybe coming from the team. And Ms. Wilson, it looks like you want to chime in a bit with an added to that, but that's where I think this has come from.
It could be a combination of many things. We are required and always have been to do proof of residency. And now, we've always done that by just showing something. And we're just asking for that piece to be in the file because they're asking to make sure that we're doing our due diligence around that.
And more formal and ticking a box, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll just
Dr. Jory.
I'll just add in here and say that because each particular group that goes out has its own flavor, if you will. What pleases one individual or some other individuals may not please the next group, and so we have to err to the side where we are holding the line and having the most robust evidence that we can in order that we don't end up having a significant correction in our funding. Again, thank you for all your help, parents, and our apologies for any inconvenience.
I think when you refer to group, you mean the audit team groups.
I do.
Come from the meeting. They come from the ministry, and they're a team of people or group.
They are a team of people with different preferences sometimes, yes.
Yeah, and they have different quirks. And so it adds a different flavor sometimes to some of the evidence that we're required to produce and or be a little more diligent about recording. So thank you for that, Ms. Wilson. Thank you for the question, Felicia. Appreciate that. Any other comments, trustees? And I don't see any more questions from the public. So could I ask for a motion to adjourn? And thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. And have a lovely evening, everybody. It didn't quite snow here as much as we thought, Mr. Monroe, but we did have flurries.
It can stay away too.
Yeah, stay away. No snow days for Felicia.
Jillian, could you hang on till after everybody's gone? She went, she has no. Will you do that?
Thanks, folks.
So I wanted to ask you a question about something you said earlier. And that was about daycare centers. That the kiddos we're gonna have to think about building daycare centers. You're on mute.
There you go. It was Ron who was talking about that, looking at daycare centers being on in the in-camera meeting, being on different properties.
Yeah.
We also need to develop a plan around our